Okay, good afternoon and welcome from the town of Falmouth, although you're going to get an official welcome from the town of Falmouth in just a minute. So today's a chance to celebrate the completion of the Kunamesut River Restoration Project and the Kunamesut Greenway Heritage Trail. I'm so happy that so many of you who have made this possible are here to see the results of your labor. Our past celebrations over the past 4 years include an October 2017 groundbreaking, which also had a nor'easter, and we survived it. We had a May 2018 completion of phase 1 and ribbon cutting for Dexter's Mill Crossing. It rained that day also. We had a September 2019 visit from the Lieutenant Governor, and it rained that day also. And lastly, we had an October 2019 groundbreaking for phase 2 and ribbon cutting for Swift's Crossing, and it rained that day also. So those of you who were doubters, who texted me or emailed to ask if this would happen, I said of course it would happen. It always rains and it doesn't stop us. Thanks to the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program and other outreach, this project now serves as an example throughout the state of a nature-based solution to increase resiliency to climate change. In these past presentations that we've had, these past meetings where many of you have been, I know it might seem like deja vu to many of you. For a handful of us, it's deja vu 5 times. Previous get-togethers have emphasized what this project will mean in terms of coastal resiliency. But today what I want to do is emphasize that it's a project by combining talents and resources of many of us here in Falmouth, on the Cape, in the state, and in the nation, has an exciting future. Today's program will begin with a few words from Doug. I'll take care of his dog while he's up here. And our elected officials who have given steadfast support for this project since its inception 12 years ago. Sue remembers 4 years ago the nor'easter when Congressman Keating had to leave early because his boat was sinking. So Doug, chairman of our select board.
Hello all, thank you. Doug Brown, chairman of the select board. So I don't know if everybody, probably mostly don't know this, but I grew up here on Shorewood Drive, and as a little kid I used to row my kayak up this river, and a couple of times we went all the way to the end, which is what the Greenway Trail is going to do when it's completed. And when I was a kid, I thought that the fish and the eel and the blue crab that were over there on Shorewood was like unbelievably plentiful, and it was. And I thought I knew a lot about the river because I grew up there since 1962. But a few years ago, Falmouth Water Stewards was making a series of short videos, and we interviewed Joe Netto, who's here today somewhere. And Joe told me about what the property was before my parents built their house there. He said it was farmland, and he was working on the farm that day, and the guy took the horse with the trolley, the hoe, whatever you call it, and he went into the river a little bit, and he dug up a bunch of mud, and it flung up onto the beach, and there was all kinds of clams and quahogs in there. And I always thought that in front of my house was just eel and blue crabs because of all the mud. But I didn't really envision what could have been there before. Just like a lot of people come to town now and they can't envision what was here before. They see a river and they think, oh, that's nice. They see a couple of birds, but they have no concept of what it was before and what it could be again. So I'm very excited about this project. I have to admit, when this project was early in its early stages and Virginia Viella was forming the Coonamessett River Restoration Working Group, I was one of the East Falmouth skeptics, and I went to the meeting saying, you know, why do we have to get rid of cranberry farming? Because we used to have farming here and we had fish. We knew it could both exist, but we too were short-sighted, not realizing what it could be, thinking that we already knew. And so now when I see what's happening here, and the first year, even though it was under construction, the number of birds and the wildlife activity that resumed when the construction type industry of the cranberry growing stopped, I was pretty impressed. And I'm very excited about the Childs River project, another great project, very similar in nature of restoring a river which used to have a bog on it. A lot of great efforts are taking place right now, and I'm looking forward to a lot more of them. This is just the beginning of this. When this path is completed all the way up to Coonamessett, it's going to be quite a resource for our town. So I'm so excited to be here and looking forward to hearing more about it. So thank you very much.
Okay, our next speaker is Senator Sue Moran. Sue began this project as a select person, and now she's our senator, and so she's seen this project through many of its phases. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks for that warm welcome, and thanks to all of you for coming, showing your support for all of the work that so many of you have done. I want to bring greetings from my partner on the legislative end, Dave Vieira, and I started way back in looking at this project amongst others. I was chair of the Board of Selectmen at the time. And I want to talk about two things. One is the way that intergovernmental agencies can work together, and the other one is really economic development. And you kind of think those are at opposite ends of the spectrum in a way, because when I look at Dr. Betsy Gladfelder, who has an incredible legacy in the town of Falmouth, but really heavily weighed in volunteer hours, putting together ideas, science, and then compiling all of the state, federal, and local assets and putting those all together to the extent that many places that I've gone over the last several years up until recently, this is one of the projects, and that, as she sort of glossed over at the end, it is really the model for moving forward all over the state with cooperative investments in projects. And and she's going to talk more about all of the institutions that are included, but the thing that it really bears saying to all of you is that you all have had a piece in this. Everyone from, there are folks who count herring. There are folks that, are strategists. There are folks that are, measuring bog guck with, some kind of science, technology that goes through. And to have this all put together requires, incredible commitment, including from the town of Falmouth. I want to thank Doug Brown, the chair, for coming here, and I see Sam Patterson and other folks here, along with people who Public Works is here. Peter McConaty, his staff. There's, it would take too long to go around, but when you look at that initial investment, it's a sure bet payoff for economics for the town. This is something that's not only an investment in our children's future in terms of residents of the town and benefit to the town, particularly during COVID, when we know to be out in the air, to have classrooms outside. There's nothing better than to actually teach by concrete example. When I grew up, oldest 5 girls, my dad was in a wheelchair. I can't count the number of times we were stuffed into the station wagon, so probably I think my mom could have 5 minutes apiece, and we would go on a nature walk. All these projects are accessible, they wow, they catch interest, and it has a bottom line to the economics of the region because of the tourism economy, and it's a huge piece of giving back and into our future. So I really just here to tell you from the bottom of my heart that all of you built this, and you should bring your children, you should bring your friends, and you should stand proud and say, I did this. So thanks to all of you, especially Dr. Gladfelder.
Thanks, Sue. My unofficial title for this project is project coordinator, which I had to come up with a title when you're applying for grants. But what I tell people is, I can't really do anything. All I can do is listen to what people would like to do and put it together. And it's really amazing the number of people who have contributed to this project. So I'd like to just next introduce a series of 6 speakers, each of whom either I work with them individually or I worked with the group that they're representing. And these are all people who have different approaches to what's happened here at the river, but they each gave me ideas of what to think about and sort of how to make this project keep moving along. So the first person I'd like to introduce, and I saw her over there, but I don't know where she is now, is Jane Baker. There you are. So Jane Baker is her profession, her formal profession is high school art teacher and an artist in town. And as you go around, as you visit some of the signs, and I noticed there's one on the connection sign here, her students, well, her second grade students,
Well,
put together,
kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
put together are the artists
Right.
in
So
the Dexter's Mill.
yes, my project, not my students. But
Your
I'll
project.
talk about it. Okay.
So I've asked her to think forward and combining art and nature, which she does so well in town. Thanks.
Okay. Hi. The reason why I'm not a second grade teacher. I'm a high school teacher, and I'm a printmaker. And when I apologize in advance that when I give these talks, I tend to talk in tangents. But my name is Jane Baker. I grew up here, and I teach at Falmouth High School. And so the Falmouth Education Foundation is this lovely group that gives me grants every year. Well, I write grants, and then they say, sure, you can do that. And what we do is we go out into the community, generally for naturalist studies. I take my high school kids out, and I try to get them to actually look at our beautiful town. As a high school student, you can tend to get a little jaded growing up around here. It's so gorgeous that you just want to be somewhere else eventually because you're a teenager. But I try to get them to actually go out into nature and study what's in front of them, and then we make artworks from that. So about 5 years ago, I did a grant. We called it Title. There's always like a general theme. So the theme that year was migration of creatures that the kids might not necessarily notice, such as horseshoe crabs and striped bass and monarch butterflies, etc. So it was all of my honors and AP kids at the high school, the AP Lit kids at the high school. So there was about 64 high school kids, and then why not wrap in all of T-Ticket elementary second grade? So we did. So Betsy happened to be working with them with herring adoption. So they all were adopting herring online. They all were naming them things like Larry and Steve and stuff. So we thought, the high school kids and I thought, wouldn't it be great if the kids all did a portrait of their herring? So, so the high school kids went to the elementary school. The kids all did portraits of the herring on canvas paper. And then the high school kids arranged them, and so that's that big blue rectangle with all the herring on it. That's my kids working with the little kids. So that was 5 years ago, just studying the migration of creatures. And the little kids, so the little kids came here. The high school kids didn't make it to the river that year, but the little kids came and worked with Betsy, just actually saw the herring coming through. And now those kids are all in 7th grade, and they remember that experience, and hopefully they'll connect them to here because a lot of them live right down the street. A few years later, my brother-in-law, A.D. Colburn, is working with the Childs River Restoration, and he was talking about pollinators and illustrations, and he was finding it very expensive to hire someone to illustrate the things that he needed. So again, my high school kids and I worked together. Each of them created 4 or 5 different illustrations in different media, and we had a whole sign-up sheet of what to volunteer for. And so a lot of the illustrations that you see around here were my high school kids doing things about pollinators and insects and places around here and whatnot. And from that, we created a free internet library, like a Google Drive, so that Betsy could access it and AD could access it, and anybody who was working with pollinators could then access these images to be used by everybody. So the river is a great resource. The town is a great resource. I'm so glad that I found Betsy, or Betsy found me. It's been a great collaboration. And we're going to continue to work with getting teenagers out into nature and, learning from what's around them, because it's key. So thank you.
Thanks, Jane. And please, as you drive away from here, the trail, all the other trailheads have pictures from Jane's high school students, as well as on many of the interpretive signs. So we're very appreciative of that. It's a special touch. The next section I'd like to talk about, and I saw him, can't see him right now, but is to talk about history. And when we talk about land use history on this river, we have to go back to the Native Americans who were here. And so David Whedon, who's on the Wampanoag Tribal Council and the Historical Preservation Officer, there you are, David, has kindly agreed to come. He actually wears a lot of hats. He's also a Mashpee selectman. And, but he's taken time out because one of the things that meant a lot to me was talking to him early on and talking about the importance of the natural resources here.
Katabatash, Betsy. Kui Kwasin, Wanikisuk, Nutomas, Masipi Wampanoag. Hello, my name is David Whedon. I'm, as Betsy said, a Historic Preservation Officer for the tribe. And I do wear some other hats I won't go into. But I just wanted to say that, you know, this river and all the rivers around here in this region have really supported the tribe. The tribe's been here for thousands of years. In our oral history, we go back to the times immemorial, and the historical record and science puts us here, you know, minimally 15 to 20,000 years ago. That's a long time. And throughout that time, we've relied heavily on these rivers. In our way, our traditional teachings teach us that put everything here that we need, medicines, the food, everything we need to survive and live here. And we've done so for thousands of years. We are still here. Throughout the history, some of these areas that we relied upon have changed and converted. You know, both Mashpee, Falmouth, the region has utilized the cranberry industry. Its influence, you know, Ocean Spray and the mass-produced cranberries that they have now actually derived from the local Cape Cod cranberry originally. So, you know, they served a purpose, but taking the initiative, and I want to commend the town of Falmouth and all the partners that you look at the panel, there's quite a few, and that's no easy task to coordinate that much involvement. But we want to thank everyone that's been involved to restore these areas to their original state. We see them as gifts. You know, nowadays we call them resources, but you know, they're gifts from the Creator, and we need to be appreciative of all those things. And it's good to have the Heritage Trail to go along with this, to teach our young ones the importance of these areas. And I just want to thank everyone for being here and taking the time out of the day to express concern and be supportive of this project and all the other river restoration projects that are going on throughout the region. Thank you.
Okay, so when this project was in its sleeping phase for 30 years, the last 10 years of it, which was the first decade of this century, two groups played an important role and really got this project moving. So the first one, I'm going to call on Greg Mills, who's a board member of the 300 Committee, and we've worked closely with the 300 Committee, in particular on the Kunamesut Greenway Heritage Trail, but they are really responsible for putting together the Kunamesut Greenway. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to join you today representing the 300 Committee as a member of its board. I first want to thank Betsy for her dedication to this project, and to her and all the other organizers of this event for bringing us together to mark this special occasion. I should say, you mentioned Congressman Keating. I am also a boater. I'm a sailboater. Our boat is actually thankfully out of the water, up in the yard, and so I have no concern about it sinking today. The 300 Committee is proud to have played a very significant role in this project, furthering our mission, which is to permanently preserve and protect open space in Falmouth through acquisition, education, and stewardship. Our board president, who many of you know, Anne Marie Ronfola, wishes she could have been here today to celebrate with us. Anne Marie is out of state, but she did ask me to send along these words. Huge congratulations to all partners involved in making this project a reality. The 300 Committee is committed to working with you all in making our public lands welcoming and inclusive, and this trail goes a long way toward that goal. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and see you on the land soon. I'd also, before I go on, like to mention and introduce a couple of the members of the staff of the 300 Committee who are here today. Hopefully they'll raise their hands. Our Executive Director, Jessica Rittenauer, who many of you know. Our Program Services Director, Lucy Helfrich, is also here. And Alex Zola, who is our Stewardship Director, who couldn't be here today, is also was importantly involved. This project is indeed a terrific example of what strong public-private partnerships can accomplish. An important element of this collaboration has been the active involvement of the Falmouth community, not only in providing the funds needed to develop specific landscape features of the Loop Trail area, but also in providing the volunteer effort needed to create the informational panels along the trail, some of which you see, of course, right here. The 300 Committee's early focus on this project was to raise the funds needed to make the area handicapped accessible, the trail itself and the connector paths to it. Through the generosity of a single donor who issued a matching challenge to inspire donations from our members, we were able in November 2019, so almost 2 years ago, to present to the Select Board a check for $295,000. These funds supported the construction work needed to grade the pathways leading to the 2 boardwalk crossings of the river, and also to create the switchback pathway from the trailhead parking here down to the trail itself. This allows visitors across a wide range of abilities to enjoy this extraordinary natural setting. Additionally, the 300 Committee provided the team of volunteers who designed and then helped install the interpretive panels alongside the Loop Trail, as well as the trailside directional signs and maps. This team, led by Betsy and along with Allison Leshen, and Allison I know is also here today. Allison, that's a shout out to you. Thank you for your help. That team conducted extensive research into the natural history and cultural history of the lower Kunamesut watershed. Their careful work formed a strong basis for the educational component of the Loop Trail. Going forward, the 300 Committee will remain involved in the land management efforts along the restored watershed area through our core group of volunteer stewards. We also expect to promote public enjoyment of this site through guided walks and other outreach activities. Finally, the 300 Committee remains committed to continuing its land acquisition work in the area of the Kunamesut Greenway Heritage Trail in coordination with the town as we seek to identify strategic parcels that could help enhance and protect the Greenway for many years to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. And now I want to switch to the other critical NGO who played an important role in that sleeping phase, but has continued to assist us. And I can tell you that without their help, we would not have had the wonderful monitoring program that we have, that you're going to hear more about with the last speaker too. But I want to introduce Wendy Bissler, and I've worked with Wendy closely. Wendy and I are kind of on speed dial, and I do want to shout out to Linda Deegan, who actually put together the required plans for the funding agencies. And when I would write, there she is, when I would write to her and say, hey, I need this final report, she'd get it done. So, Wendy, Coonamessett River Trust.
Hello, thank you, Betsy. And thanks. It's great seeing so many people here today. I have to say, I was rather skeptical when I woke up this morning. I thought, oh, no one's going to show up today, but you were right. No matter if it rains, I didn't even bother to contact you and ask if it was going on because I just knew from previous experience, I knew it was going to happen. Anyhow, yes, so I'm Wendy Bissler. I am the president of the Kunamesut River Trust, and the CRT was a very early advocate for restoration of the Kunamesut. Starting back in 2001, we had a vision of what this river could be. And education was always a key part of what we envisioned for the river. And one of our goals was not only to create a thriving river ecosystem, but also for the river to be an important landmark for the community of East Falmouth, while nurturing student and citizen engagement and environmental stewardship of this precious jewel. The CRT scientists and the citizen volunteers were lucky to have the opportunity to monitor the river before the restoration occurred, and now afterwards, so we can document what changes have occurred. Our monitoring projects include counting herring, tagging herring, inventorying plant species, measuring the river channels, mapping cold water inlets, etc., 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 including that muck that Sue Moran had talked about earlier, measuring the depth of the peat layers. This collected information was used not only to guide the restoration plans, but it was also folded into our educational programs. One of these is the Adopt a Herring program, and Jane had mentioned that when she talked. So what we do, this is also part of our herring tagging program too. So we tag incoming herring during the spring migration with these little tiny pit tags. And as the fish pass by an antenna, their pit tag sends a signal with the embedded tag number to a data logger. This information helps tell us how the herring behave as they move through the river system. Plus, it also pinpoints where there are problems or obstructions in the fish movements to their spawning grounds. Now that the dams and berms and those horrible culverts have been removed from this lower section of the river, we can see that the herring, where once they were obstructed moving up the river because of these things, now they just tend to whiz right by, and it's really an amazing thing to see. We also realized that this information of the herring was a perfect educational opportunity. So we donate the tagged herring numbers to local classrooms. Each student can adopt and name the fish. And so like Jane had mentioned, there's some very creative names, but it seems it's funny, the most popular one is Bubbles. We see that over and over again. And they follow, then students can follow the progress of their fish as it moves up the river to the spawning ground, and then when they return back to the ocean. We have worked with teachers to incorporate the Adopt a Herring program into concepts explored in their curriculum. However, our most fun and most popular educational activity is hosting the field trips for local students. Prior to the pandemic, we hosted over 400 school children each spring. One of our wonderful volunteers, who I hope is here today, Maureen Nolan, she's back there, is a retired teacher, and she visits the classrooms prior to the field trips to prep the students, to prep them to think about things as they come to visit the river. She challenges them to be investigative scientists, trying to find out why the river should be restored to a meander rather than remain a straightened channel, and why concrete barriers and water control structures should be removed for the fish. The goal is to get the students to think like ecological detectives, to consider how restoration can help fish and other critters that depend on the river system. We are also working on a video with these same concepts so that students in Falmouth and elsewhere can use this. Plus, we have a Follow the Herring in the River computer game under development. And because you're never too old for education, we also have two very popular handouts at our kiosk, which is at the lower part of the river. One is a self-guided tour of the lower section of the river, and it explains the whats and whys of why these things happen for the restoration and how they are improving what's going on. So please pick one up. They're there. We have actually a hard time stocking these because they're so popular. People keep are using them, which is awesome. And the other thing we made was a Kunamesut River field guide. So on one side are plants that you'll see in the area, and the other are animals that use the river system. The kids, we developed this with the Woods Hole Sea Grant program for the school visits, but we decided they were so great, and especially during the pandemic, we made them available also at our kiosk. And I see people using these when they're walking around the river. It's awesome. So pick one up if you can. And anyhow, the CRT is very hopeful that these programs will engage students and the general public to value this gorgeous, beautiful area. And we look forward to continuing our monitoring projects, our educational programs, and assisting with the restoration. And I just want to say thank you to all the people who've made this vision of what we saw and thought about even better than what we could think about in 2001. And a special thanks to Betsy, of course, because she's awesome, and I don't know how this would have happened without her. The town of Falmouth and all the organizations that are also involved, and also our CRT volunteers. Thank you so much.
Okay, our next speaker is Commissioner Amadon from Fish and Game, right? Department of Fish and Game. But he'll probably tell you. But under Fish and Game are a division of ecological restoration, and this project would not have occurred without the guidance provided there, and it also would not have occurred without two other divisions who played an important role all along, but especially in the sleeping phase, and that is Fisheries and Wildlife. I know Steve Hurley's here, and probably Brad Chase isn't here. Brad Chase always tells me when I write to him, he says, "You're doing a good job, you don't need me." And he's Department of Marine Fisheries. So we have 3 federal agencies, 4 state agencies, and yeah. Well, I guess we have the Conservation Commission and Marine and Environmental Services here in Falmouth. But Ron's going to tell us how important it is to have this integration. Without DER, believe me, especially the permitting phase would have been a disaster. Wouldn't have happened.
Thank you very much, Betsy. As Betsy said, my name is Ron Amadon. I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Fish and Game. And we oversee the 4 divisions, as Betsy mentioned earlier, the Division of Ecological Restoration, the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, the Division of Marine Fisheries, and the Division of Fishing and Boating Access. I'm very happy to be here again. I think this is the 4th or 5th time I've been down here, and every time I come, it looks so dramatically different. It's absolutely amazing the work that goes on here day in and day out. This project has been many years in the making and is the result of passion and hard work by a whole lot of different people on this restoration project, by many, many partners. I've been asked to try to describe to you folks just how federal and state agencies can work together to support a restoration project like this one. There are basically 2 different ways that can happen. The agencies that help to complete projects like this, and one is funding and the other is technical assistance. On the money side, the Commonwealth has invested well over $1 million into this project, and the federal agencies have contributed more than $2 million for this project. Our state and our nation truly value this type of work and recognize the importance of pursuing the restoration of natural resources for the benefit of both people and the environment. Our federal partners include the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, NRCS, and NOAA. On the state side, this project has been supported by the MVP program, the Mass Environmental Trust, and the Department's Division of Ecological Restoration, as well as the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife and Division of Marine Fisheries. In addition to funding, agencies can support this type of work through technical assistance. The Lower Coonamessett River project was designated as a DER priority project back in 2009, recognizing its potential to bring environmental benefits and statewide regional significance. With that designation came staff support and technical assistance. The technical assistance means getting in the trenches with the town and the partners, helping to oversee the engineering, the design, the permitting, meeting with regulators, helping to write grants, connecting federal funding programs to this project. This means participating in late night meetings, Conservation Commission meetings, site visits, outlining the permitting strategies, matching grants, and whatever else it takes. However, none of this government assistance would mean anything without the town coming in to help. The town of Falmouth and many other partners and the citizens of Falmouth voting to support this project at all of the town meetings, which occurred several times. DER continues to invest in this area by designating the restoration of the upper Coonamessett River as a priority project again in 2021. So it'll continue on and on. The work that we celebrate today has resulted in substantial benefits to the surrounding ecosystem and the people that live here and visit this community. It has improved wildlife passage through the replacement of the failing culverts, the dam removals. It has restored over 50 acres of riparian habitat. It has restored over 4,600 lineal feet of riverway and increased climate resilience for the town of Falmouth. It has also provided new recreational opportunities for the community and those that visit. The addition of trailheads, footbridges, interpretive signs, and the new gateway to the Greenway amphitheater viewing platform provide for new opportunities for the public to experience. This is all in thanks to the dedication of this project's many, many partners, and many of whom are here represented today. We're very excited to be a part of this, and we thank you very much for working so closely with us and to continue on with the next phase. Thank you, Betsy.
Thanks, Ron. Actually, Ron hasn't been in all 5. When I saw him, he said, "Don't you have those all the time?" But I said, "You haven't been to all of them." So I'm thrilled that he was able to come today. And our last speaker, but after she's done, I have some thanks that I want to give to some important people here. Actually, everybody here is important, but I have special thanks. So the next speaker, so part of the inspiration in doing a project like this, it's one thing to have to be the first person, but actually there were 2 other river restoration projects in southeastern, I should say Cranberry Bog restoration projects in southeastern Massachusetts. And Gloriana used to be a cranberry farmer among her other talents, and she was in charge of the Tidmarsh project. And while we were thinking about our project, and before we did it, I would go up to Tidmarsh to take some pictures to see what it's going to be like. And one of the things, and many of you will remember this, I showed pictures I see Sam there at several selectmen meetings, saying it's going to look ugly at first, it's going to look like a mud hole, but just have faith, it'll be beautiful. And it did. So Gloriana also, in addition to being in charge of that restoration and her other profession, is formed an NGO called the Living Observatory. And one of the goals of the Living Observatory is to to answer the question, what can we learn about these restorations and how can we improve on potential restorations in the future? So Gloriana.
Thank you, Betsy. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here today in Falmouth and look out over the Kunamesut River restoration with a fantastic new public space and the Heritage Trail. Great work, really exemplary. This celebration reminds me of an African proverb. Perhaps you know it. It takes a village to raise a child. And this project has certainly, and actually all these restoration projects, take such a complex cooperation from so many people to get them done. And each of them is unique because of the people who have come together and shaped them. So it's really exciting to be here and hear the sort of beginnings of all of this. I was asked to speak about science and scientists and their contribution to the success of a project like this. It's a tall order, and you've heard a little bit from Wendy and others of some of the great work that's been done here. But scientists use a systematic approach to measure and understand the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world. And so while we can all look at a project, a cranberry bog, and we may think it's very orderly and beautiful, for the scientist, the flat, featureless, straight channels is not at all like a natural wetlands. And that's what I think generates their passion and excitement about these restorations. In the case of the Kunamessett, I want to give a shout out to two scientists, Linda Deacon and Chris Neal, both of whom have helped me enormously in my work on Living Observatory. But they also imagine this as a much more diverse, biodiverse wetland. And over several years, they systematically gathered quantitative evidence through activities such as fish counts. Obviously, other people did this as well, but they're people who I've worked closely with. Fish counts, water temperature measurements, and analysis of plant communities. And their passion for the natural world, the real important part of this is that their passion for the natural world and this evidence allows them to educate others, bring other people into the mix here, direct political will, and that helps make these restorations possible, because without political will, they're not possible. Today, we're not done with the Cranberry Bog story. As Ron mentioned, but not specifically, we now have a Cranberry Bog Program in Massachusetts, which will help farmers make a green exit. And as a farmer, I can tell you the decision to leave your bog behind and to have a restoration done on it is not an easy decision, emotionally or financially. You really have to take that leap. And it's one thing if the town owns the property, but when a farmer of 5 generations owns the property and his kids are off doing other things and cranberry prices are in free fall, they're faced with a decision about what are they going to leave their kids in the end. And it's how it is. The fact that we now have the opportunity to have many, many acres of cranberry bog restored in southeastern Massachusetts, most of which are on riverways or close to riverways, is extraordinary. And it has implications for practice and for science. And I want to give a shout out here to Steve Hurley, because I think, and DER, both of them. The thing about having many cranberry bogs restored is that they are similar in their geology and in their agricultural history. And this makes the set of cranberry bogs interesting to scientists. And it allows science to feed back into the design and say, this didn't really work here, or this could work much better. And Steve is very focused on fish that use salt water and fresh water and monitors them and feeds back how is this cold water coming into this project. Very, very exciting stuff. So we can all sort of see this has exploded with vegetation. We can imagine that this is a wonderful place for a big storm event. Lots of water will pour into it. But it is a much harder thing for us to even speculate how long it will take for this project to sequester carbon, or what would have happened had everybody just walked away. What would have the soils been like? What would have the vegetation been like? And the answers to these questions are really important because of political will and because of the future of our children. And that is that if we know the answers to those questions, we can discuss how these projects mitigate in terms of climate change. So it's really important that we keep scientists involved, and this was the purpose of founding Living Observatory. We gathered a lot of findings. They're in a report. You can download that report free from our website, livingobservatory.org. So in summary, I'd just like to say having many projects on cranberry farms in coastal Massachusetts will allow us to help improve practice. We will be able to advance scientific knowledge. How do wetlands form, freshwater wetlands? We can demonstrate, hopefully, climate impact, and the Eel River, I think, is already, it's not measured because we didn't have those scientists involved in the beginning of Eel River, but from experts looking at Eel River are saying it is now sequestering carbon. We can educate upcoming generations of practitioners and scientists, and Wendy, I think, gave some really good examples of how you're getting this project into the schools and getting high school students out here to see what makes a wetland. And we can educate the public. And that's really important because we have more and more development, we have more and more nitrogen, we have more and more problems, we have a climate that is doing crazy things, and we need to all be aware of what we can do to make it better. And so for me, the issue is how can we all work together? How can we know each other, both practitioners and scientists, share our specialties, but also grow our knowledge together? Again, thanks to Betsy for your amazing vision and for inspiring all of us to continue to work on these projects. Thank you, Betsy.
I have to be honest with all of you. Had I known what I was getting myself into 12 years ago, I don't know that I would have leapt so quickly. But it's been great, and I've really enjoyed meeting a lot of people. So I just want to close by saying, make sure you see the sign of our partners. And we have more than 40 partners. And I want to and what I say is, it kind of looks nice to see those logos, but there are passionate people behind each of those logos that make things happen. And I'm going to divide this group of passionate people into 4 groups. The first I want to recognize is the town of Falmouth. This is a town project, and town boards and or town departments like conservation and DMES are important in maintaining our natural resources. The DPW, almost every division, in fact, I went over it the other day, and there are only 2 of the 7 or 8 divisions that have not worked on this project, But I think I can see a way to bring them into to it. And then in addition to that, I'm just touching some of these. I know almost everybody who works in Falmouth now, but the finance department, especially accounting, town council, town administration, there are grants coming in with funding and grants going out to have work done. And believe me, that requires a lot of signatures. And yeah, it's amazing. And everybody in the town who works for the town of Falmouth should really be proud and feel that and they are a major part of this project. Um, just just to just as an example, the town DPW helped with accessory parking, building fencing, putting in gates, moving granite blocks, maintaining roads and trails. And I do want to point out two people. They won't be happy with this, but Chris Bennett from DPW and Mark Kaspersick from Conservation. I don't know where. There's Mark in the background. They think I only want them because they're strong and they can dig the holes that these posts go in. But it's been a real delight working with them on this whole project. By the way, somebody asked me this in the interview before we began, and volunteers are always welcome to assist in maintenance. And if you want to get involved in a real project, you can contact Mark and me. We're happy to put you into a work crew. And also, and I know there are people here, so a lot of the funding for this was from the funding, not mentioned the $3.5 million that Ron mentioned, came from the donation from the 300 committee, but also from 3 grants that we received from the Community Preservation Fund. And I really appreciate that everybody on that group working with it. The next group that I want to thank are volunteers. You've already heard about Kunamesut River Trust and the 300 committee, but many other people volunteered. And Jessica Rittenauer has been pointed out, but she collaborated on many of the grant applications, and she, along with Wendy, is also on my speed dial. I do want to mention one other person. The granite blocks, as far as volunteers, and then I have 2 other groups. I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, what about me? The granite blocks left over from the 1700 Dexter's Mill provided the inspiration of developing a heritage trail with interpretive signs. Grants from Massachusetts Environmental Trust and the Horizon Foundation provided the funding. However, this is something I had in mind, and I had interns, and we mapped it, and Bob Shea is here from GIS in town. He helped with this project early on. But the fact is, I was dealing with writing grants and trying to get the river restoration going, and I got a call from Allison Leshen, and there she is. And Allison said, are you going to need help with the interpretive signs? And I'm like, yeah. And she said, well, I'm about to have a knee operation, so you have me for 3 months. So we started working, and actually this first set of signs she and I did. And then she said, well, I'm going to go into the Azores for a month. This was in the spring. And I said, okay, well, when you come back. Well, unfortunately for Allison, but fortunately for me, when she did come back a month later, she emailed me and said, the bad news is I broke my hip. The good news is you have me for 6 months. So she recruited 3 other people. And that's how lots of projects here happen. Somebody came, had an idea, put a lot of energy into it, and we made something happen. So the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club and APCC have been steadfast partners throughout this project. Allison, actually, if you've seen videos on this project, Allison has done all the videos on this project, and the first one was funded by APCC. And finally, we also contacted many people for knowledge and illustration for the interpretive signs, including Museums on the Green, Woods Hole Historical Museum, the Base Remediation Program, and the Wampanoags. We received much help with donation of materials from local businesses and various kinds of help from many others. Okay, now, none of this would have happened without grant funding, and I can't thank the personnel who worked in these government agencies enough for being so helpful in the process. One of the federal funding agencies worked with me, asked me one day on a field trip, he said, was our agency the easiest to work with? And I turned to him and I said, yeah, of course. But then I said, the truth is, every agency has its quirks and ways to do things. But if there's good communication, it's all good, and the work and then the paperwork gets completed. Ron mentioned the programs that we have, our federal and state funding programs, and I mentioned the Community Preservation Fund. Finally, I know you're anxious because there's a treat at the end, and I'll tell you, I'm on the last page. Finally, I'm delighted that all the engineering firms and construction firms that have worked here for the past 4 years have been able to attend. I know they do not always get to see what happens when they leave a construction site full of mud. This includes Interfluve, which did the river and floodplain design, Ty and Bond, which designed the John Parker Bridge, and Stimson Studios, which designed the river crossing boardwalks as well as this gateway, which we're opening today. The collaborative spirit and attention to detail from Nick, Eric, Joe, and David were much appreciated. Sunco did the river restoration, the John Parker Road crossing, and the Dexter's Mill and Swift's crossing. Shaba built this gateway, including the overlook, which will give us a good overview of what Mother Nature and Father Time will bring to us in the future. Steve and Butch, Steve from Sunco, Butch from Shaba, led informal weekly sessions on the site, and the company's owners, and I'm surprised that Travis isn't here. He hasn't missed any of the previous ones, but Travis Sumner and Eddie Shaba played significant roles in the project's success. What I found was very successful and made everybody happy in our weekly construction meetings was to bring apple cider donuts. And so for those of you who have missed them, who haven't been around for a while, I have lots and lots of apple cider donuts that I'll bring over here. And then Butch said, well, if you're going to have donuts, you need apple cider too. And so we'll have apple cider also. So actually, maybe we'll set it up at the bench there. But please come by and enjoy it. And I forgot. So this is supposed to be a ribbon cutting. So I don't know where my ribbon. Do you have it? Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to cut the ribbon. And then I hope you'll enjoy the look, enjoy a donut, and please enjoy the gateway.